Hi guys, welcome back to the continuation of my Pathfinder game chronicle. Where we left our heroes last time was basically just wrapping up the last few, or the last area of the Caves of Chaos. They went back, and basically the kobold area was the last bit that they had to do, and I'd already decided these kobolds were in the process of packing up and shipping out anyway, because over the last 4 days these heroes have come through and slaughtered the rest of all the humanoids. They didn't want to be next, and so it didn't take much for the characters to just storm in there and go, "You lot out, don't come back or else," to scare all the kobolds off, and they disappeared off into the forest. I've got this horrible idea that at some point there's just going to be this huge mosh of humanoids who have survived out in the forest that's just suddenly going to come back. But that might be a scenario for later time, so yeah, quite cool. They completed that area. They then decided that they were going to look at the initial entry area where they came in through the tunnel, because there was 2 rooms that they thought held undead. They didn't want to mess with at the time. One of them basically contained 8 zombies, and it was fairly simple for the cleric to just stride in and go boom with his channeling and basically knock them all to dust. The second room, which had a series of thrones, all of these skeletons on them in royal, regal sort of accoutrements and gems and so forth. They'd left that room alone initially because one of the characters had made this comment about, "Oh, they're royal undead, you don't want to mess with them." But now they've got an extra level into them that they didn't have then. They decided to try it out. And of course, you have the archetypal thing. One of the characters strides bravely forwards to take a gem or a ring or whatever it was off of one of these skeletons, and they all animated. But they are bog standard skeletons, which was the point. So once again, the cleric steps in and goes boom and takes them all down. And so that was the Caves of Chaos completed. They got some gems and about 150, 200 gold pieces worth of jewellery they could gather. And they headed back to town, told them all, the caves are empty, you're safe, there's no more brigands. The mayor has ordered a statue to be built of them. One of the characters, the fighter, Gabriel, has decided or requested that his particular statue in the group has a helm on, because he's got this idea that Warduke or any of the others coming back are going to basically see this and go, so that's what they all look like, and he doesn't want to be recognised, which was quite amusing. The druid, Grill, had basically asked the mayor, could my bear now be allowed to come into the town? And the mayor basically said, it's a bear, it's not coming in our town, I don't care what you've done, you cannot bring that bear, it's going to frighten children and all sorts. And he was going to argue the point until the other character said, well, if you're going to join us on our quest, we're not staying anyway, so don't worry about it. And off they went. Now, the characters had asked that we didn't do a dungeon for another couple of sessions, which I basically agreed with. And so I dug up from my collection this particular module, the Forest of Doom, which was published several years ago by a company called Myriador, who had the license to convert the old Steve Jackson, Ian Livingstone Fighting Fantasy solo game books over to D&D D20 modules. And I've got them all. Unfortunately, the company, I don't know what happened, but they lost the license, which meant that you've only got 3 of the 4 sorcery books, which is a bit of an arse, but can't be helped. And they did about 8 of these, I think it was. Now this is one of those which I'm going to name drop here because I don't often get to do this, but this actually has my name and 2 of my mates as playtesters. So it was and the first time I've actually had the chance to run it, rather than since we did the playtest several years ago, and I thought that would be cool. Unfortunately, it is basically, because they converted them pretty much as accurately as they could, it is still basically a dungeon crawl, because it is literally a case of it's roads and it doesn't assume the character's going to go off the road really. But I thought we can wing it. So what happened basically was the party prepared to leave. Besnick, their employer, decided that if they follow the road, which is now secure, they could get to the dwarf mines on the other side of the forest, a week away sort of thing, and it would be a nice change of pace. They might be able to pick up some stuff there they can sell elsewhere, and Greykeep is always going to be another option for him when he comes back. And so off they go, escorting the 2 wagons. Ben's leaving his daughter Sylvia, basically riding on the controlling the wagons, and the characters walking alongside. Heading in, they find after a few hours an old tower, which they don't recall anybody mentioning before when they spoke of it in the town. They go up and they knock on the door, and they find this wizard who they recognise from their knowledge checks to be a hero from 3 or 4 decades ago, who waged a war, fight against the war against the Drow. And he invites them in for tea and, we're going to chat, because he always likes to be recognised. Offers to sell them some potions, but they decline. Mainly because I'm not entirely sure why, because they had plenty of cash at the time. But and they spoke to him, and finally, if you remember 2 or 3 of these reports back, I said I'd written out this nice description of Warduke and where he'd come from and so forth. And then nobody either had the relevant knowledge skills, which was a bad check on my part, and they didn't bother to ask a local bard that they met either. So they had no idea who this guy was, really. But here, someone had the clever idea of asking this guy. And so what they learned was, and some of you will recognise names that I've scavenged here, but they've learnt that Warduke was once a paladin. He has fallen from grace and is now an anti-paladin, basically. And he was one of several, I'm not going to say secretive, but shadowy members of a mercenary guild in Cheliax known as the Horn Society. Grey Hawk players probably now rolling in their seats, or their graves, or wherever you might be at this point. And basically, he, with the aid of one of the others, a wizard by the name of Kelak, again, people may recognise his name, basically killed the others and took over the mercenary company. And rumours have it that Warduke and Kelak have come up north to Varisia because Warduke is looking for some kind of artefact. They don't know what, but rumours are saying that it's something of great power. So the characters are now thinking, right, okay, so we've got something, not only have we got this weird, gribbly entity that's looking into our past and futures, we've now got this guy potentially to deal with, which they will have in a while to go. So they thank this guy, and they basically say, well, which way do we go? Do we go north or south on the roads? This is whichever you go, eventually the roads reach the other side of the forest, and you'll reach the northwards. So the characters actually end up taking the south road, and off they go. They have a couple of encounters on the first day. One is a raven who is sitting on a signpost, clutching a money pouch, and the druid, it's quite an amusing story. The druid goes up to try and talk to it with his handle animal sort of thing, and he fluffs the roll entirely, and the raven just looks at him and goes, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" in the common tongue. And it turns out that this was actually a rogue who had tried to steal from the wizard they'd just spoken to, and he polymorphed him into a raven with the gears or some such to say that he'll only get turned back once enough travellers have paid him 30 gold coins, which is basically his payment back to the wizard. And the druid was quite nice here. He gave 10 gold to the raven, who hadn't got anything thus far. And so the raven was very talkative, and basically when they were asking about the routes and everything through the forest, it was telling them about the various things that live in the forest and so forth, but also made mention that the dwarves may be scouring the far end of the forest, because the chieftain of the next town along, dwarven town, has had his symbol of office, a small war hammer basically, an ornamental thing, stolen by a pair of brigands. And the rumours in the forest are basically saying that the brigands went their own way, one took the head of the hammer, one took the shaft of the hammer, which is basically the plot of the module anyway. And the characters get it in their head. Well, at this point, one of the players, I think it was the druid, basically said, "Is this forest of doom?" And they basically got it in their head. If they can find these 2 river bits, then they might be able to get something either for Bearsnick or for themselves by handing the hammer back, sort of thing. So, after having played this raven and off they go, the day passes uneventfully. At night, the party gets attacked whilst the sorcerer is on watch by a giant forest scorpion, which basically grabs him, grills Bear Companion, and tries to retreat into the woods. Party wake up, have this massive battle with this thing, and the cleric. Remember, the cleric was the player of the cleric was a bit odd in the last session. I'm not entirely sure what the sitch was. I'm guessing, crappy day, but today was this particular session. He was well into it, and we had this cool final moment. He got a really good strike, and basically described as he ran forward, slid underneath the scorpionary, Clash of the Titans style way, basically thrusts the blade of his scimitar up through it and pushes his way up until he bursts out in a spray of yellow ichor or whatever, slaying the giant scorpion. It was all very cool. Second day travel only had one encounter. They stumbled upon a fight between an ogre and a flail snail. Basically at a crossroads, but it was going on in the middle of the crossroads, so they couldn't exactly get past it. So they wait to see what happens. The flail snail smashes the snot out of this ogre, killing it. At which point they notice that it appears to have something around its neck, like a pole or something so big, on a chain. And one of them thinks it may be the haft of the warhammer they're looking for. So they leap in to do battle with the flail snail. And it's one of those odd fights because they should have been able to easily handle this, but they never seem to get particularly good dice rolls to attack. The flail snail seem to get absolutely terrible dice rolls on attack, and eventually they kill it. Eventually they're really, really lucky, and they finally get a couple of really good hits, really good damage, and they take it down. The druid makes a successful roll on his knowledges and tells them that if they can get this huge, moossive, brightly coloured shell to civilization, it's worth a lot of money to the right people. So they spend about half an hour trying to drag this huge, giant, dead snail off the road, cover it with bushes, and hopefully something will have come along and eaten it, and they'll be able to just recover the shell at some point. They do, in fact, find the screw-in haft of the warhammer they're looking for on the ogre, and then can carry on. Nightfall, and they reach a rickety wooden rope bridge over a chasm with this semi-fast flowing river underneath. A site of a small camp where people obviously stopped before. They get a little bit concerned because it doesn't look particularly safe, this thing. But they decide to wait till morning. The cleric learns a spell that will fix so much area effect of something, and I went, that will be more than enough to fix the bridge. But they're going to try it first, and unfortunately the cleric gets about halfway through and some of the boards disappear underneath him, splash into the river. There are some horrible shoals of flesh-eating fish, but they don't do anything, and it takes the druid to dive in after him to pull the cleric to safety, and they stumble back through the forest to the others, at which point then they decide to fix the bridge. Well, I'm not entirely sure on that one, but there you go. So the spell repairs the bridge, and off they trundle. Their third day through the forest is uneventful, and the fourth day, which should be their last day in the forest, I think, they get waylaid at one point by a forest giant, who basically demands 10% of what the wagon's carrying. They refuse. The giant obviously doesn't want to fight, so he's trying to use all his bluster and everything else to get them to hand over all this stuff. And eventually it just gets to a point where they irritate the giant so much that he has to just step in and take a swing. And this was quite a nice fight. Again, unfortunately, everyone else seemed to be doing damage. Gabriel, the fighter's attacks just never seemed to penetrate the leather of the giant's boots. Again, bad dice rolls. But eventually, they get the giant down to 7 or 8 hit points, and it surrenders. It gives up. It drops its sword to the clan, and they start talking to it again. And the druid, in discussing this, ends up making a deal with it where he'll actually, he says, if you'd have said this much, we'd have given it to you. So the giant goes, well, pay me this much. And he gives it to him, and the giant goes, well, okay, and takes the money and hobbles back off into the forest. And the rest of the party are left there looking at him like, what? We've just beaten it and you're just giving it money. So that was quite an amusing scene. And then the final bit of the scenario basically has them following the remaining road out of the forest. And unfortunately, they spy the last basically encounter they've got, which is a wyvern's nest high up in the trees. And you can see it's adult wyvern, and you can see lots of babies. And they're pretty sure that this thing is going to see these wagons trundling by and attack. And this isn't one of these like thinner. This is one of these. Have you ever seen some of the artwork? I can't remember the artist's name. That did a lot of the old 70s artwork for the Lord of the Rings and Mirkwood, and it's like these huge halls of trees sort of thing. I kind of tried to describe it like that, and so if this thing swooped down, it would have plenty of room to manoeuvre. So sure enough, the fighter strides forward, Gabriel strides forward, and he basically waves it down because he's going to try and shouts up at it. He wants to take it down. It swoops down, fails to get him. He fails to hit it back. It flies over the wagon. Tries to do is it an Immelman where you sort of like come up and turn, completely fluffs it and drops to the floor, and they all just pounce it. And they do eventually take it down. It was quite a tough fight. They did do it. Unfortunately, the druid got hit twice by the stinger and ended up needing some quite high fortitude saves, and ended up getting down to like 1 con by the time they defeated it, and the poison had run its course in his system. So they've stuck him on the back of the wagon, and they've told basically, don't go any bumps, don't give him anything that we've not checked over as clean water or anything like this. They're terrified that something's going to happen and just kill him because he's on 1 con. Then there's some discussion what to do about the wyvern's nest, and Grill the druid makes his roll and basically says that sorry, it wasn't Grill, it was the sorcerer, who makes his arcane roll and basically says that these things are solitary except when mating. It's got its hatchlings, and probably what will happen if the mother's dead, then one of them will survive by killing and eating the others, and you'll still have a wyvern in the area. So Gabriel climbs up the tree, failing a couple of times before he realises he's got his armour check penalty, climbs up after taking his armour off and basically slays the half a dozen or so hatchlings, and finds the body of a man partially eaten, and on his person is a few gold coins and the head of the hammer. That's not where it is obviously in the module, but I didn't really want them having to waste time coming back in here unnecessarily. I'd rather move the campaign forward, so it was an opportunity to finally get this thing. And that's pretty much where we've ended it. They've killed those, they're on the wagon, and they're heading out of the forest towards the nearest dwarf village, which is still a day or so away. What I'm thinking to do now, I've got a week to prepare for it. I'm thinking of sort of like a village-based scenario. I'm thinking possibly something like a murder mystery or something like that. Something where it's not going to be quite so formalised, and a bit more, they can go around, investigate what they want, talk to whoever. I just need to kind of fathom out how I'm going to do it. But we shall see. But that's how the last session went. Everyone had a good laugh, I think. Had to be toned down for something because, as I said at the beginning, it's pretty much still, even though it's a forest walk, it's still pretty much a dungeon because its areas are numbered and so on and so forth. But I think it went out quite well. So until next time, hope this hasn't been too boring, and I will see you on the trail, adventurers. Take care and good gaming.